No, it's too early to say whether there is any emergence of second wave. I think we still don't have strong evidence to say that variants are causing this kind of a problem. Let us ask everybody not to use convalescent plasma unnecessarily, irrationally, and at least multiple times. It is going to become an endemic infection, to my mind.
Why is India witnessing a surge in new cases of the novel coronavirus? Why are some states more impacted? What are these two new variants that we are talking about? And where does India stand when it comes to genomic surveillance? To answer all this and more, I'm joined today by someone who was the face of ICMR during the initial months of the pandemic, Dr. Raman R. Gangakhetkar. Welcome to the show, sir. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
I want to begin by asking you, where do you see India's position vis-a-vis the virus 1 year on? Are we actually seeing an emergence of a second wave?
No, it's too early to say whether there is any emergence of second wave. Uh, we need to understand that because of successful lockdown, prolonged lockdown that we had, the curve, epidemiologic curve that we generally see, started pretty late. It was almost 5 or 6 months advantage that we had. The result is now it is on a decline, but there are small pockets where you are seeing some resurgence of this particular infection. Is that something which is perhaps indicative of second wave? Perhaps not. No, we cannot say with certainty as of now, and the reason is very simple. Ours is a very large country. If you look at this pandemic, it all requires one, the population density. You have second driver as mobility, and the third driver is perhaps migration. Now, when we talk of these, you will find that the places, geographic areas, will have different factors related to vulnerability. And since such a variation tends to exist, there would be small areas where, when you are lifting lockdown, you will find that there would be some increase which you would note. Unless there is a consistent trend, you should not say that this is emergence of second wave, but this is a moment where we have to issue caution to people that they need to continue to follow COVID appropriate behavior, because you don't want us to land up into second wave at all. And if you ask me, I would just say that today, if you look across the world, in my mind, excepting Brazil, among all the large countries that we have, the rest of them are showing decline. And if they are showing decline, and if we continue to remain in a decline, that would be the most important movement for us to ensure that COVID appropriate behavior, all vaccine related strategies are adhered to really well, so that India doesn't become a place where second wave has started and then people have to worry whether it will spill over in rest of the places.
Dr. Paul mentioned that the Genomic Consortium has detected two new variants in three states that are significant amongst the various mutations that they've discovered, and they've spoke about N440K and E484K. If you don't mind, if you'd explain explain to our listeners, what does an N440K variant mean? I mean, it's described as an escape mutation. What does that mean, really?
See, today we don't know much about N440 variant, whether it has some kind of clinical significance. And the clinical significance that we by and large speak about is either it should impact the transmission efficiency or it should lead to severe disease. We don't know anything about this. Now, with respect to the other variant, E484, you find that there is some evidence that perhaps the normal immune response that tends to produce antibodies against it may not be sufficient to take care of this emergence of new variants, which would essentially mean that it is likely that if you have this variant around, reinfections would also be seen in that particular area. Now, would I think that this is something which is a very dangerous thing happening? I don't think we have sufficient evidence to say that all those new cases that are occurring because of new variants. So we should not blame the variants directly. Now, and I also feel that we need to recognize one thing, that it's easy, it is a convenience bias for most of us to blame the virus for the spread rather than looking within and understanding that you are not following the COVID appropriate behavior. What is in our hand is most important in any case. I think we still don't have strong evidence to say that variants are causing this kind of a problem. At the same time, I would also say that doctors, the frontline workers, the healthcare workers, they have to assume, for all practical purposes, that this could be a real threat to them. And those who may not have taken vaccine, they should try to vaccinate themselves. Because in any case, if it ever comes up, then in those cases, it is this machinery which will be facing the onslaught of this particular virus, and they would be exposed to this virus repeatedly. So best is to get protected so that they will be able to discharge their duties well.
I mean, you said that we shouldn't blame the variants too much. In fact, these two variants were also seen back in March and then I think in July. And at that time, they were not spoken about as much as they're being spoken about now. Something changed, or are we looking for explanations?
No, I don't think we are looking for explanation. What is more important is, since genomic surveillance has been intensified now you are seeing more number of cases with different variants being detected through this surveillance. And it's a natural tendency. People suddenly say, oh, this variant is increasing, and then putting two and two together, no, people say, oh, this must be happening because of this variant. But I don't think there is any evidence to say that.
Right. You know that the presence of South Africa variant, the UK variant, and Brazil variant is very, very limited in the country. I think Brazil is just one case so far, and these variants are known for their transmissibility. That's the evidence that's emerged. That's not something that we've seen so far in India. Is it because we've not found enough evidence of its spread? What could be the possible reasons?
No, now these are all my personal opinions. No, I could be proven wrong by the virus as well as the science.
Right.
This is how science evolves.
Right.
But the reality is, one of the first things which the government tried to do was, they said, now every international traveler who comes, he has to first undergo RT-PCR in his country 72 hours before. Those who land up, if they are symptomatic, they are also again, they have been asked to isolate themselves, whether in an institutionalized place, or they are also going to go to home depending on whatever country they come from. And subsequently, once you isolate, if the test is also offered, and afterwards, if the person comes out as positive, the contacts are also traced and they are also isolated.
Right.
Now, when you have such a strategy, this strategy is more likely to work because this virus is short-lived. But this doesn't rule out. We have to, as a caution, we have to understand one thing. We got few cases from Wuhan, and that led to development of 1 crore people getting infected. So we have to pull up ourselves, pull up the socks, and try to strengthen our own COVID appropriate behavior.
Right. I wanted to come to genomic sequencing and our surveillance, and how I wanted to ask you, how satisfied are you at the pace with which we are doing these sequencing? I think the aim was to do 5% of all samples. We are nowhere close. I think we've done 6,000 odd samples so far. I just wanted to get a sense from you, how satisfied are you, and how do you think we can pace this up?
This is a little tough one because I tend to have arguments over it. See, when you pick up 5% of the samples, what will happen? You will pick up 5 out of 100 that come to you. Now, when you take 5%, you need to remember that the probability of picking up a variant continues to be lower. So you need to have a strategy in place. Now, what we should be worried about is not finding out only the variations, but variations of interest. Now, what do I mean by that? We mean by that is if I have a strong strategy whereby I say that I want to find out various variants of clinical significance. And by clinical significance means that some variants which would have a change in the spike protein so much that they can challenge or these could perhaps escape the immune response that a vaccine could generate. Now, how do you do that? One of the best ways to do that is try to look at the RT-PCR test. And in a RT-PCR, when the patient actually has COVID infection, but his spike protein genes don't light up, then you need to worry. So you minimize your work, but maximize your outputs, right? And instead of having 5% sample, we could actually look at an alternate design. Then that might be far more useful to my mind. So given whether you test 1,000 samples or whatever, if we would have had used a screening criteria, it would have had been far more easier. Even in small numbers, we could have had picked up. Otherwise, you are left to the vagaries of sampling, the errors that could occur just because the numbers that you test tends to be small enough. But I would worry about variations as well. If the number of mutations that the virus would accumulate over a period of time increases, then the threat becomes larger that there could be a virus which could evade the immune response that was induced by the vaccine in itself. The second issue, which is also important, is there is no known antiviral against this particular virus. So, why does this virus mutate? Is an enigma. So, why is this virus producing more of these mutants? Perhaps the reason lies in the immune response, that perhaps immune pressure that tends to come over the virus. Now, how does the immune pressure come? The immune pressure comes from a fact that if I infuse an individual convalescent plasma repeatedly, what would it mean? The virus will have to face a challenge of multiple neutralizing antibodies which are coming from different human bodies because of their past infection. And now virus will try to find weaknesses in the same. Because now if I'm giving not only the set of antibodies that the virus had generated in my body, but from others also, you will find that the virus will mutate for taking care of at least those which it can negotiate. So eventually, you will find that if this kind of a virus keeps on circulating, newer variant is likely to come because of clinical significance. What is important is we know convalescent plasma is not useful at all. We know if at all, if we have to give, it has to be given in first 2 or 3 days time. So let us refrain, let us ask everybody not to use convalescent plasma unnecessarily, irrationally, and at least multiple times.
You made a really important point, and ICMR's own studies indicated that plasma therapy is not effective, and yet it remains within the protocols, the clinical protocols. Why don't we just take that call and remove it? Because the temptation is always there then to opt for it, and for the patients wanting to opt for it because they feel that this is going to help them.
See, one of the things, this is typical. See, we first saw it in HIV. When you keep on changing the protocol periodically, it becomes so often that people don't read the fine lines. No, it becomes very difficult for them to follow what changes are occurring. Similar thing perhaps is happening even in convalescent plasma. Convalescent plasma or anything in COVID, one of the recommendations that was given was you can use it, since we know convalescent plasma is not effective every time. The only recommendation was if you have to use it within first 2 to 3 days time. No, but we forgot that 2 to 3 days period. We thought we are not saying no to convalescent plasma. I think I think we need to disseminate that fact well.
I wanted to ask you, you've obviously very, very closely worked and seen the evolution of the virus from the beginning. In your opinion, you've seen the vast pace at which the knowledge has come and gone around the virus. How do you see this pandemic ending? How do you see the other side of the picture?
No, that's a very tough question. It is possible that I may be proven wrong by the virus, by the emerging evidences that may come. But one thing which I strongly feel, that ending this epidemic is in our hand. It is going to become an endemic infection to my mind, but it won't have the kind of a outbreak nature which was seen across the countries, across the world. That opportunity lies with us, because the entire world, to after, let's say, I am assuming 1 month time should be good enough. Even Brazil will come down dramatically in a month's time if you look at their curves. Now, one thing which I feel is, after a month, you will perhaps have your most opportune moment to ensure that no new cases occur. If we do stick to our COVID appropriate behavior, we would be lucky to avoid this particular danger. If we don't do that, then yesterday we were speaking about UK variant, South Africa variant, and US variant, and Brazil variant. It could suddenly become India variant, and then we get stuck.